second presentation, the rise of the modern revenue management software trends and predictions, run by CEO of Optimize, Mr. Alexander Edstorm.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I need this really, but
You need this because we are
recording. Okay. So that's
Please do scan your code at the beginning of the session to avoid missing your credits. Thank you.
great. So let's try this new clicker. See, it works. Technology when it works, right? So, all right, let's get started. I think what's interesting here is that when we talk about the future to start with, what's very important is that all hotel brands and hotel groups need to go through what we call a digital evolution to even tap into the potential of the future of what I'm going to talk about. I think that the majority of hotels actually today are sitting in the first step here still, which is that many hotels have accepted the fact that they need to connect to the cloud. So they have either they have a plan for it or they have done it. The second thing is that enables you to tap into a lot of data, just like we heard in the previous presentation as well. However, I would argue that this is still not fully planned out for hotels. They don't know, in general, what data should I really make use of and capitalize on for my business going forward. This is something that I think we as an industry are exploring together as we're going forward. But also, as with the previous sessions here, we heard about AI and so on. So it opens up the arena quite a bit. I think I actually hate this slide in a way because it's so depressing. But I think you need to talk about the elephant in the room, and I think that one big catalyst for this industry, if you ask me, what we saw was actually the pandemic. I will not mention it anymore, the P word, but I think a look in the back rear view mirror, so to speak, what it meant for hotels are these things. I mean, and these things like reduced occupancy rates, revenue loss, and job cuts and so on, it triggered some things and accelerated and worked as a catalyst for a new era. And we call it the reboot. And so what we saw at Optimize was that the adoption for new technology in general across the board was many of our hotels that initiated, for instance, to move to the cloud to start with, but also the fact that they needed to find new business models, the extended stay and a lot of those kind of day use of their facilities and so on. So it was a new environment from one day to another. But also the fact, the last one that we saw, which is also what we can see going forward now, that a lot of specialists needed to become generalists in many ways. And the reason for this is that in general, the operations needed to be so lean. So certain people needed to take more responsibility across more areas, simply. And here, the beauty was here that technology at this point started to also enable this. So this pushed the organizations to adapt to new technology. So I have one of these cases, for instance, where we had a hotel group with 40 hotels they had 40 hotels and they had 17 revenue managers full-time to price their and yield their hotels prior to the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and obviously it was everyone had to go. But then when they did the reboot, so to speak, they realized that we don't want to rehire all of those revenue managers if not needed. So when they started with Optimize, now they are using 2 revenue managers for 40 plus hotels. So quite lean operation. What we have seen also is this matrix on the right-hand side is from McKinsey. But I highlighted some of those things that we clearly can see. We have heard them, almost starting to get a little bit sick and tired of the AI revolution. But I think when it comes to revenue management, I think AI is, revenue management is about trust very much. You need to trust what we deliver in terms of output. And AI, for that reason, in terms of neural networks and deep learning and so on, will actually not happen for that purpose in revenue management for quite some time. I think that hotels need to be able to open up the lid to be able to see and in an easy way explain why a certain outcome is what it is, which you cannot do if you go full deep learning and so on, a neural network. However, what we are looking into now at Atomize, for instance, is how can we use ChatGPT for the revenue manager, for instance, or for the executive team at the hotel group. So imagine that you, after you close the last month, and all the stats, all the data you have in the revenue management system, the graphs and everything, and you just auto-generate your monthly report. ChatGPT gathers all the data from the system and builds that report in less than 20 seconds. Saves tremendous amount of time. You can auto-generate this to the executive team and so on. Quite exciting stuff. Another trend that we believe in, and that I think you mentioned it as well, real time, it's a no-brainer if you ask me. I personally, coming from previously, was a CEO for an ad tech company where we did real-time price optimization in the ad tech industry. And, because where this will end up, if you ask me, is exactly what you mentioned. You need to be real time because you need to be able to price a product based on preferential values. And the only way to do that is to capture it in real time. Just like you'd run an optimization for ad tech, for an ad, it needs to be based on preferences. If you don't go there, you will never be able to price effectively enough, if you ask me. And that will happen in the cloud. I think I mentioned the lean and cross-functional teams already. But that we can see by enabling all of these things, there will be cross-functional roles. We have seen them already starting to surface quite, What's interesting here also, what I think hotels, if you ask me, need to capture as well going forward, I think someone mentioned earlier today, which I think was absolutely on spot, is that hotels actually, if you ask me, should have seen themselves as a sort of a data company, because data will be the fuel, rocket fuel going forward. So rather than always outsource that to sort of third parties and so on, so you need to have that competence about your data and what it means to you in-house, I think, going forward. So development we see. I think I will rush through these. I think you recognize many of these things, but today's challenges for many is that, gather data and so on, manual reporting. We have had the people leaving the industries, which needed to be replaced by junior people as well, in general. We also today, I would say, in general, the industry is too reactive, too much relying on past data on the books, and maybe too much on seasonality. So when the Taylor Swift effect happens, everyone, what happened? What we sold out, and everything, because everyone was relying. She should not have performed today, at this date, because it doesn't say so in the historical data. And every time that happens, everyone is as surprised. I think it's six. Data department. To me, to that um, if you too many information, because we measure disengagement index among our users, which is quite unique, I think. So usually when you build software, you want to engage your users, right? The more time that's spent in your product, the more value you think you're building. But there we do the opposite because we believe in automation. Real time, I mentioned, it needs to go all ways, both ways, I mean, both intake but also processing and output. We also believe that it needs to work on all devices, not only on a computer, because the modern hotelier and the modern needs to be working anywhere in this multi-role. So on any device, real-time I mentioned, optimization, it needs to be easy to understand. Just like you enter a GPS today, if you go in from A to B, you do that. You don't care so much about how exactly is that route. But if you want to, you need to be able to dig in, obviously. This one, real-time weight balancing, is what I mentioned about if you have the Taylor Swift experience, and she announces a concert, for instance, you must be able to weight balance your data sources in real time, meaning that the system must know at all times, decided by what's happening in real time, to assess continuously what weight it should weight sort of historical data, for instance, into the overall forecasting. If a Taylor Swift, it must know immediately that it should dump all that weight to zero and only rely on what's happening right now in that pickup, for instance. This goes in all directions in terms of weight balancing of data sources. I think I'll stop there because I know the time is up as well. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? What is that?
When you do look at pricing, okay, this is good. I look at your demand as in the future, how much was the pricing of the competition? But they don't look enough at the competition. They look at competition only from one standpoint, which is pricing.
Yeah.
They don't know how many rooms you have in your concept. For example, you might be your hotel is 500 rooms. Your concept is a 5-star, 275 rooms, priced twice as much as you. And your RMS, if you don't limit it, because if you let RMS do whatever you want, it might be a disaster. No matter how good your setup is, it will price you very high, and you still have 300 rooms in the bank. The other hotel might be 50 rooms.
Yep.
And then RMS here is useless in
Yep.
this case. And I haven't seen any system doing that at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a big gap there.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's why we don't use the comp set data as absolute data points in our optimization. What we do is that we use those for price sensitivity versus the comp set. That means that if you have a stronger brand, it can be also 5-star hotel versus 2-star hotel, for instance, the brand projection in the market. That is shown in the price sensitivity versus the comp set. So that will simply be greater, right, if you have a great brand. And that means also that if you pick a certain comp set, sometimes some say Did I pick the right comp set? It really doesn't, it's not that important because, I mean, you can compare to any, really. And we do this per room type as well, just to cover what you said, that that's very important also to do in real time, the price sensitivity, rather than the actual value of the rate, of the competitor rate, because of the reason you just mentioned, because we don't, that's very important.
That's why I believe that human influence will always be there. Even
Yeah.
if you have the best setup and programs, you still need to activate sometimes here and there and put your influence, your market intelligence and what is happening
Yeah.
around you into the
Yeah. The most funny, actually, the Taylor Swift thing happened in Stockholm. She's going to play in Stockholm on 16th of May next year. And all hotels, except for our hotels clients in Stockholm, sold out after 6.5 minutes. It's crazy, after the press release was left. And still, our clients still have, no, I think they're still selling, but I think they are averaging about 60% occupancy now for May 16th. But everything else is sold out, and they can yield up into from now, quite easy ride up into then, quite nicely. So it's real time is extremely important to capture that, I think.
So we all know what we need for next year, since nothing major has been announced in Dubai. We need a Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what
Every
we need.
day,
We don't have Coldplay,
every
we don't
day.
have Expo, we don't have FIFA, so we need a Taylor Swift,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Thank you
Any
so
more
much.
questions, final questions before we start the second session? Third, actually.
Yeah, third.
Nothing? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For